Hi. All right. So, well, one thing I wanted to, since we were talking about, teaching back then and teaching now and what's the
Yes.
difference. So, one of the main differences I think that's obvious is, back then teaching online wasn't as accessible as it is right now. So, how do you approach the two types of lessons? I mean, because one is teaching and coaching someone in person, and then like obviously today it's everyone can go online and people can reach you from China, people can reach you from India. So how do you approach the sessions differently?
Well, first of all, about a year ago, this is way before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
I decided that instead of doing a third DVD, because that first DVD, first two DVDs was 15 years ago, and I
Mm-hmm.
know so much more now than I did then.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of putting together a DVD that sticks on a shelf and no one buys DVDs anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I need to make the instruction accessible and refreshable quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I put together these online classes. And so at
Mm-hmm.
store.melissacross.com, you can join these group classes, which are far less expensive than private lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like 13, the whole class is 13 and a half hours. You
Mm-hmm.
could take three parts. It's
Mm-hmm.
very organized. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Speak, and I deal with the technique with the speaking voice, and then the resonating strategies happen in the singing, and then screaming is like the third or advanced course because there's basics that have to be in place before you can do this in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things are what all singers learn. And you have to, I'm not teaching pony tricks where you can make this rant, rant, sound. This has to be something that incorporates inside of your communicating um, instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that needs to be automatic and something that you don't think about. And it takes time to teach it. I can't teach it in one lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And one lesson, an hour, is a lot more money than, I mean, the whole course is the price of 1.5 lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And you will probably get the results. You don't even need the private lesson, but the private lesson is absolutely fine except of the latency in the signal. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. They can't figure that out. They have sort of figured it out, but it's very weird and archaic the way, they make the keyboard, they take it so that the keyboard will synchronize the singer and the keyboard. See that latency when a person has something called ear training problems,
Mm-hmm.
where the pitches, like say they want to sing and not just scream,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have the musical development to make their voice go to the right note.
Mm-hmm.
That is extremely difficult online. It can be done, but it's very difficult because that process, ear training, is a tedious and takes a lot of patience, and it's something that you really need one-on-one to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I get around it because I give
Okay.
exercises, right, and then they work on the exercises, and
Mm-hmm.
so the group classes are great because I give the group class and then I give them the notes. I teach them how to find what notes are right for
Mm-hmm.
them. The warm up, I teach them how to choose which warm up, and then they
Mm-hmm.
get a recording as part of the class. It's
Mm-hmm.
included in the price, so they have their own warm up because one size doesn't fit all. If you have a teacher
Exactly.
teaching one size to everybody, they don't know what they're doing.
That's very true. Yeah, and I'm sure like, it's a lot of people are very thankful that, now that you've started these classes that split into three sessions. And I think you are so right because no one buys DVDs nowadays. And I think and also because these classes are groups, so then they are more affordable to more people, therefore more accessible. And then in some ways they still kind of get like a one-to-one kind of benefit because
Yes.
it's like you said they get a recording of them being there and things like that.
Well, after the class, after every class, I open it to people to come and work online. So
Hmm.
that turned out to be really successful because when you watch somebody respond to the instruction and it's not you, you can actually get a different point of view of what the objective of the exercise is. So you're listening to what's happening to the voice as I'm giving the instruction, and you get a better preview of what the purpose is and what they're supposed to be getting out of it. That is actually more therapeutic than a private lesson.
Oh, wow.
Because the group lessons actually work out better.
Oh, wow, wow. Well, I hope, when the connection here gets a bit better, or, if we can figure out the time zone thing, I hope to have the privilege to be on one of the classes as well.
You can come to class anytime you want. I have one Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday for the next 2 weeks. I will let you in for free, and you could be a part of it.
Oh, I'm humbled and very honored to hear that, and thank you so much. Well,
Because I send you a Zoom link and a password so you can come to class.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa. That's very kind of you. And okay, well, so speaking of, screaming and singing, in your opinion, as an educator for so many years, what is your definition of a good singer and a screamer?
Well, I would say the first thing is the authenticity. That would be the first thing. Like the ability the ability to snap into a being, an existence. It's your own, or to channel communicatable things and to put it forth in an honest way. And the rest of it, in terms of singing, when you have musical notes, the ability to pitch match and to go from vowel to vowel without bad habits. So that would be breathing and, placement and all those things that singers learn. It can be learned. You don't have to be born with it, but some people have it easier than others because they are born with more of a connection with this, what they hear, what they speak. Like sometimes people's neurons are more connected, usually because of the amount of time that they were exposed to music when they were very small. Like from the time they're born until 5 years old, the more music you get into the kid, the better they have, because that is the time in your life where you start to assimilate the physics of life, right? And music is physics. It is the world of vibration and frequency. And it's something like you can't see a note. You can't see the wind, but you can see the trees blow. Or you can't see a note, but you can make a note happen. But it's like the wind. It's nothing you can actually control directly. It's a bunch of things happening at the same time in the brain. There's multiple centers in the brain that happen when people sing, and a different loop when they speak. And if that loop gets interrupted, then it doesn't sound good. So that's what I think that the vulnerability and the sensitivity is in terms of like the best voices in the world, the best voice in the world until he died was Pavarotti. Luciano, right? That is the Tom Jones, Sir Tom Jones. He's a British singer that's been around since the 60s. That is a legendary voice, God-given, resonant, bright, and like Freddie Mercury, for instance. Freddie Mercury, right, had a God-given talent. And part of that had to do with the architecture of his body. Same with Whitney Houston. You will notice that the mouth, like your mouth, is a singer's mouth.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
Very wide. There's two parts of the vocal tract, right? There's the back, called the posterior vocal tract, and then there's the anterior, or the front of the vocal tract. And basically those are fancy words for the back of your throat space and the space between your teeth, tongue, lips, all that. So you see that there's a wideness here in the front. That makes a big chamber. The bigger the chamber, the bigger the resonance space, right? So it's like your vocal cords do not make the sound that you're hearing. The sound that you hear coming out of a singer is a multitude of things. It's air pressure coming through the lungs, moving through the vocal folds that sound like, they make a click noise. That click noise gets translated into this resonating space that has multiple frequencies, okay? Frequencies, like for instance, if you I'm going to move the camera just for a second, right?
Yep,
Because I'm going to
sure.
get to my piano for a second.
Yep,
Okay.
sure.
So if we have a frequency like this, right? That's not just that note. It's our brains hear it as just this note. But in whatever instrument is playing that frequency or that pitch, it's called a frequency because it's sound cycles per second. You know, like for instance, this is A, and it's 220 cycles of sound per second. An octave higher is 440 cycles per second. An octave higher is 880. So it exponentially goes. Okay, so when we hear a fundamental pitch, we are actually hearing a multitude at the same time. I keep going up and up and up. And yeah, I can, and then it goes off the keyboard to a place that no keyboard can do and only dogs can hear. So interesting about that with screaming, right? With singing, we were talking about what makes a good voice, right? But with good screaming, it is the resonating space that creates that high-pitched 10,000 cycles per second. So when I'm going, yeah, like that, that high-pitched thing is 10K, 10,000 cycles per second. Remember, this note is pretty high. That's 550. So you can imagine 10K.
20 times. Yeah.
Right. So 10K, the human ear is more sensitive at anywhere between 3 and 10K. Right? Actually, it's 3 and 5. Right? So when you're on stage and there's a ton of instruments, electric, double kick drum, bass, when you're screaming and there's no upper frequency, it's getting buried. So how people get, because they compete with the sound on stage. But if you have this, that high squeal with it, right, then you have a perception of loudness. Loud is not an action. Loud is a perception. If you think of loud as an action, you're going to get hurt because you're going to be trying to compete. But loud is actually something that is perceived by the audience. And that is the trust that I have to get. People have to trust me when I tell them that you don't need to work that hard. You just need to act like you're working that hard and mean what you say and figure out how to create that resonating space in the back of the throat. Now, here's the problem. There are some types of screaming that don't allow the back of the throat. If I go like that, if I grind my vocal folds, the back is small. There's no resonance. You're only getting any kind of resonance from this front, but it's not the bottom and the top. So, for instance, if I speak like this, you can hear the high part and the low part. It's just like wide. If there's no depth to it. So the trick is to get people to use their vocal folds to pulsate, not sing, but to do that, because that sound on a microphone is huge. You're hearing it on a microphone through Skype, right? You're hearing that what I just did was so quiet, and I went, and it sounds like, wow, somebody, right? That is where the disconnect is with metal, is that the inference of the music is like this, but that is not what makes it loud. That energy is not making it loud. It's the resonating space that makes it loud to the audience. So it's the effortless scream is the best scream.
Yep, and I believe so, and that's golden advice right there for anyone who is, constantly trying to compete with the instruments, because there's no way we can compete by working hard. I think in this case, it's more about working smart to be able to sit on top of that live mix there.
Right, that's working smart. And that's how opera works too. Opera singers do not use microphones. They sing over orchestras with 50 plus members. The way that they do that is that they create vowel shapes that don't sound like talking. So they don't go, love me. They go, love me, right? Like, love me, right? And that roundness of the sound is what sings over the orchestra. They figured this out in like the 19th century. right, in Italy. Then they did this.
Without
They
mics, without speakers.
no mics, no speakers, right?
Yeah.
They developed this singing technique called Bel Canto, which means beautiful voice.
Hmm.
Because when people like sang with instruments, they didn't sound good because they were competing with the instruments. So they figured out this way to teach people how to sing and sing over the instruments.
Hmm.
And they made a whole vocal technique out of it called Bel Canto. Most teachers teach Bel Canto, but Bel Canto doesn't sound like screaming. But I used the same idea in scream as Bel Canto. It's that same resonating. That's why a voice is a voice. A voice is not genre specific.
Hmm.
But when most teachers who teach singing are into opera, they demonstrate in the context of that genre, and people think that that lesson is only for that genre. But that's what happened to me. I took classical music, like I said, went to CBGB's and like ripped my guts out because it wasn't the right sound.
Hmm.
And because the teacher didn't understand the sound that I was trying to make or how it could possibly apply. So that's where voice science comes in also.
Wow, I think it's crazy how much I mean I'm sure you spend countless hours of learning all this and educating yourself, and it's such it's such a great thing to have you as an educator, because obviously you have all that knowledge, but what makes Melissa Cross special is the fact that you are passionate about delivering all that you have learned to other people in hopes that they don't ruin their voice. And I think that what makes you so special.
You know what's really interesting? When I was 17 years old, actually, 17, I went to acting school in the United Kingdom.
Hmm.
That the theater in the United Kingdom, that is like, that's their
That's the
thing.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
So I wanted to be the best actress in the world, although I really wanted to be a singer, but that wasn't a real job, right? But acting was. So I got into this college, and um, while I was auditioning for these colleges, because they're very difficult to get into, there's like 3 or 4 of them, almost impossible to get into. But when I was doing the audition process, one of the schools, the guy said to me, "Miss Melissa, your destiny lies in teaching." And I was, in my mind, I was like, right? Oh. I thought teachers, they teach because they can't do it, right? And that haunted me for my whole life until now. I know, yeah, he's right. I am a teacher. I've always been a teacher, and he could see it because he's a teacher. I don't know how he saw it, but he was a teacher, and he knew that I was a teacher. Now, I thought it was the biggest insult I'd ever heard, but actually, it's a compliment because a teacher is way cool, way
Of
cool,
course.
because it's a service.
Yeah.
It's giving people what they want to be more of themselves.
Yep.
If I get on stage and sing, I can lift somebody up to a different place, which is a service, but that's all you get, right?
Yep.
But if I'm a teacher, I can actually make a difference in somebody's life.
Yep. And
A
that
real.
is so true. Yeah, and that's so true. I think it's a privilege being able to be of service, like you said, to enable other people to be something, not to say greater than themselves, but then the best version of themselves. And I believe that is a true gift right there. And that is why being an educator is so cool. And then the pride you get when your students actually make it. Obviously, some go the wrong direction, but then in most cases, a lot of people, when they go places, I'm sure, as a teacher, you'll be like, that's, that result right there makes all the struggle worth it for you as a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And usually I would ask, for what your advice. I mean, I usually talk to various artists, and the last part would usually be advice. But in your case, it's so special because from top till bottom, it has been all advice, and it's so priceless. So we are going to do something specially for Melissa Cross today, and it's why is taking lessons for singing lessons and screaming lessons so important?
Sustainability. It's sustainability. The lifestyle of a touring musician is gruesome and grueling. I mean, it is like, it looks like a lot of fun, and it is a lot of fun, and it's a lot of love. But the wear and tear, if you don't understand how to work your instrument, you're going to croak. You really will. And I'm a little bit grateful for that, because that's how I got a job. But, you really, what usually happens is that you get to the point where your band is blowing up, and you have a lot of touring that you've done already to get to that point, possibly 5 to 8 years, right? And then it's time to be on a tour with the headliners, and you cannot cancel, and you cannot if you get sick, you're, so you need to know how to take care of yourself and how not to use emotional energy as the way to mobilize your voice. You have to have a parameter of physical expression in which all of your emotion goes through. And learning that, it's like wearing something that you're not even aware that you're wearing. It's like wearing a dive skin or something. It's just do the thing. And within that parameter, you don't go without doing, there's this certain rules that you pay attention to that keep you safe, right? And safe meaning keep your tour from getting canceled because you can't make any noise, right? So that's why eventually if you want to do this, you're gonna have to learn it.
Okay.
You're gonna have to learn it.
That's a very valid and very powerful reason for anyone who's aspiring to be a musician, going back on, whether they've been on tour and haven't taken lessons, or those who are looking at starting at, getting a life where they start to tour. So, and I think that's that's a good and solid reason for them to actually take lessons from Melissa Cross.
Store.melissacross.com.
We will.
You're going to get the latest information about how to do this without ripping yourself up.
Exactly. And it's not just the latest. And if someone were to spend money to learn, you might as well spend it and learn it from the best, which is who else but Melissa Cross.
Well, I've been doing it the longest, that's for sure. Yeah. I know that for a fact. I know there's no one else that's dedicated this amount of time to the same thing. So.
And your dedication, shines through your words as well. And, when people see this chat that we've had, I'm sure a lot of people will be able to sense the love you have for teaching, and to, share your experience, and, to stop people from making the mistakes that they shouldn't, and to prevent them from ruining their voice.
Besides, I like to meet people.
Exactly. And I'm sure a lot of people will be very honored to meet you as well. So